Be afraid of that word. So my strategy for doing that has always been to create acronyms, and I am the king of acronyms. I created one based on one of my favorite book titles of all time, written in the 80s by Tom Peters, called Thriving on Chaos. Would you agree that your work is usually chaotic? Those of you who have an organization that you're working in, you are going to get punished for being here, you know. Because when you get back to your office or where you work or your caseload or whatever, you're going to find there's a lot of stuff you have to catch up with, right? That's just inevitable that happens. So it is chaotic. But what Peter says is that you have a choice. You can be overwhelmed by the chaos or you can learn to thrive on it. So I decided to create this acronym to deal with this issue of RTI. And so I just want to kind of tell you what my notion is about what we're trying to do through this RTI revolution, if I may call it that. The C stands for collaboration with one purpose, to improve achievement. There's only one purpose for every action in a school, only one purpose, and that's to improve achievement. If you find yourself doing anything in a school for any other reason, you're doing the wrong thing. That means never hire a consultant to come in to do a workshop on collaboration if the purpose is not collaboration to improve achievement. Do you get my point? Think of the amount of time we've wasted in workshops and like that we've done that do not do that. The H stands for a hierarchy of tiered, effective, academic and behavioral interventions. And I've added a couple of other thoughts to this since I created this slide. So let me just have you edit this. A hierarchy of tiered, evidence-based rather than effective, evidence-based, academic and behavioral interventions implemented with fidelity. Add that phrase, implemented with fidelity. That's the other trap we fall into in education so often. Yes, okay, I got it. Your marketing worked. We bought your Tier 3 intervention. It's really wonderful. You know, we bought Kurzweil. That's a really wonderful piece of technology. That's really good. Come this afternoon to David and David Bradburn's in the back, by the way. David and I, when we do our pre-conference workshop this afternoon. But you buy that kind of stuff and you think you've done it because you bought it. And if you don't implement it with fidelity, then it doesn't work, of course. Okay? So that's the hallmark of this RTI revolution, is to build your services around this hierarchy. The A stands for a kind of a mindset, a philosophy, all, some, and few as the one focus. You aren't successful till all of your kids are successful. That's the point. The O stands for one child at a time, instructional decisions that are based on progress monitoring data. There are places in the United States, and you tell me if this is true in Canada, who can't stand the term progress monitoring, who can't stand the term formative assessment because, ooh, that's not constructivist, that's reductionist. We can't do that because we've got to keep it the whole child. And, you know, assessing the whole child is very difficult, Steve. Okay, that's probably true that it's a little more difficult, but you can do it. What does the whole child look like? How can you assess whether or not you are affecting the whole child? So that idea of making decisions on the basis of data is the issue. When the Denver, Colorado public schools asked me to help them with RTI about 3 or 4 years ago now, I was asked by the head of school psychology, so Steve, what's the first thing Denver has to do? I said, well, it's easy to say and difficult to do. Start making decisions on the basis of data. Stop making decisions on the basis of tradition. That's the key. The S stands for systems change with coherence to close the achievement gap. Systems change with coherence. And what you have here is a model that we've come up with within our company that has been being built for about the last 15 years. We've got benchmarks and all kinds of things. If you're interested in knowing more about that, you have my email address, and I can send you those benchmarks if you're interested in having them, and just use them and have fun with them because they're kind of fun. But we tried to use the made-to-stick idea here too. Notice there's just 4 aspects of systems change. They're not 962,000, as I learned it when I was in graduate school. So if you get assessment, curriculum, instruction, and positive behavior supports correctly put together coherently, you can, in fact, have success. The way you can do that is to have these 3 circles that are kind of nurturing circles. Nurturing those 4 aspects of systems change, first of all, is an empowering culture. And that's where problem solving comes into play, where collaboration comes into play, where the relationship we have with families comes into play. Sandy Christensen at the University of Minnesota, there's a book on your book list by Christensen and Sheridan about this, talks about family involvement, but she doesn't call it family involvement. She doesn't call it parental involvement. She doesn't call it parent contact. She calls it the family-school partnership. That term of art says it for me, right there. The family-school partnership, if we want to have success. And then all of that is nurtured by professional development, and all of that is nurtured by, you guessed it, leadership. Which brings us back to our topic. So that's kind of where RTI is going, in my opinion. Let's get to the bottom line. The bottom line from Dufour's perspective is we'll just do whatever it takes because we believe that all kids will learn. Now, I'm not going to go through all 8 of these lessons in each of the next slides here, but I just want to remind you of what Fullen gave us. Fullen gave us in 1993 change forces. He's really good at 8 lessons, 6 secrets, 7 of this, 8 of this. It's like manageable, so you can actually get your head around it. When I got this, I was in state government in Utah, and I used to buy 200 copies of every book that I read and gave them to everybody in the state so that we could all be kind of reading the same stuff. It was really fun to do that because it really got us really cooking in terms of new ideas. And we used these 8 lessons, and the ones I'll show you here in a minute from his other books, as 2-day retreats. Let's go through each of these lessons and talk about where we are in relationship to his insights about the issue of change. And the only one I want to mention to you right now is this one, number 6. Neither centralization nor decentralization works. Both top-down and bottom-up strategies are necessary. In fact, interesting, in his 2010 book, All Systems Go, guess what he says? There is no, write this down, there is no evidence that site-based decision-making has ever improved achievement for all kids. There is no evidence that site-based decision-making works. No evidence. And I dare you to refute me from a database, not from your bias, but from a database about this. Now, site-based decision-making and innovation does work if it has a context. In that context are a set of school division level non-negotiables within which the schools innovate. That's the point that Fullen's making in that book on that lesson. That having a set of principles that you will follow, period, if you're a part of this school division, makes sense. Now innovate within it. Okay? I'm working with the Wichita, Kansas school district right now in a very deep way that's very, very fun. I was sent in by the state of Kansas, by the way. In this case, they were between superintendents in Wichita, biggest district in Kansas, 50,000 kids. Dorothy, Gail, and the Scarecrow don't have any kids there anymore because they're older. I wanted to see if you understood the Wizard of Oz sort of thing that I was talking about there. But my wife hates that because she's from Kansas. When I call her my Dorothy, she just says some very rude things. But anyway, in Wichita, when I got there, they were between superintendents. So I said to the school board president, if you want me to come in and work, I will, but you've got to promise me as a school board that you will do what you're supposed to be doing. You are the representatives of the owners of this school district. You're the people who are supposed to be representing the owners. That being the case, if you're really going to fulfill your obligation, you'll redo your strategic plan for this district, make it a 5-year plan, and then hire a superintendent to implement your 5-year plan. Why would you allow a superintendent to come in here yet again and change the total direction of the school district? When you go to websites for school divisions or school districts or whatever they're called where you work, they change every time there's a new superintendent in significant ways for some silly reason that doesn't make any sense to me. So I said to the school board, create that 5-year plan, hire the person based on the plan. They said, yeah, that makes sense, let's do that. So I facilitated the new plan. Then they used that plan, hired a new superintendent. Superintendent is now in. Guess what they're implementing? A multi-tier system of supports to implement that 5-year plan in a full way, pre-K-12, starting right now. It's the grandest experiment that you've ever seen. Finally, what's happening, and it's freaking out the principals, it's freaking out some of the district level administrators, it's freaking out the teachers, that suddenly the district is going to act like a district. Weird, huh? One time in state government, I was having this experience with my staff. They were such experts in their specialties. And they were all beginning to act like private consultants, you know, that just happened to have individual offices or cubicles in the same place, not that they actually work for the same organization. So I said this, I thought this was a semi-brilliant idea. I didn't have many of them, but this was semi-brilliant. I had them bring their pay stubs to a staff meeting. And they said, well, that's silly. Are you going to like share them? I said, of course not, but I want you to have them with you. It's a prop. Okay, Steve, you're so corny. I guess we'll do it. So they brought it. So I said, oh, get your pay stubs out. Okay, we have them out. I said, so look on the top where it says who paid you. Does it say your name consulting firm on it? Well, you know it doesn't say that, Steve. I said, well, really, take a look. What does it say? Steve, you know what it says. It says Utah State Board of Education. I said, yes, it does. Act like it. And if you don't like working here as a staff member, I'll hire you as a consultant. But if you like working here as a staff member, remember who you work for. And it isn't me. It is the Utah State Board of Ed. Now, that's true of almost everybody in this room, that you're working for an organization bigger than you as an individual, right? That matters. That's the point of what that lesson's talking about. So then Fullen went on from there, and he then wrote another book on the Change Forces series, unfortunately called Change Forces, the Sequel, which was a silly name. I mean, it could have been called like The Empire Strikes Back or some better name than that, I guess. But what he said, I loved what he said. He said, you know, I wanted to deny that all this soft stuff mattered in schools. I wanted to make it really scientific and really hard data. And what I found in the last 6 years is that things like moral purpose are like essential to pay attention to. Collaborative cultures, essential to pay attention to. This idea of emotional intelligence, essential to pay attention to. He said, you've got to pay attention to all of this. Number 7 became my mantra, attack incoherence. Because that's the dilemma with leadership. I'm really psyched up as a person. You can tell I'm sort of emotional and I talk fast and all that. And I love making decisions based on what my heart says, and I'm ready to go. I hate that day-to-day drag of aligning systems that is essential for leadership. Those management functions compared to the leadership functions for an administrator are just essential to pay attention to. So when he came up with a term that my heart could grab onto, attack incoherence. You create a plan, you've got it going, it suddenly begins to fall apart. They inevitably do, unless you pay attention to keeping them together. That's the point he's raising. Then his third book on Change Forces, called Change Forces with a Vengeance, back to a good title. He says changing context here is the focus. It's a very interesting and difficult concept that Fullen talks about here. When a school division or a school district buys like the Kurzweil 3000, and they aren't willing to change the way they operate within that school system to celebrate and reinforce the Kurzweil 3000 within the system, it inevitably doesn't work as well. Am I right, David? Claire, is that true? It simply doesn't work as well when you do that. But when you implement great programs, great technology in context, you have a chance of making it work. That's the point that he raised in that book. So then in 2008, he came up with this book called The 6 Secrets of Change, which we'll spend the rest of the morning on. So secret number 1, to love your employees. Interesting issue that he raises there about how all of the talk that I know I've done for almost all of my career about always being student-centered. And as long as I can reflect back on a decision I've made and know that it was student-centered and not adult-centered, that I've made the right choice, Fullen says that's only half the answer. If you're not paying equal attention to the people who work for you while you're making those decisions, you're not going to be successful. So love your employees. We'll talk about that. Secret number 2, to connect peers with purpose. That's when people actually begin to really move forward together, when they can feel purposeful. That's the issue. Secret number 3, capacity building prevails. That is, we're always trying to build people's capacity. People love that when their capacity is built. Isn't that true? When you feel like you're growing. Secret number 4, learning is the work. And that really does make sense in and of itself, obviously. Secret number 5 I love, transparency rules. In other words, just like take all the camouflage off, and let's just deal with all these pieces of data we have in all respects and go for it together. And then lastly, secret number 6 says systems learn. And what the creepy thing is that systems learn whether you're doing an